everyone, it's Marine for lawnfawn. I created those 2 cards last month for the May release. These were super easy to make, so today I am going to show you how I made them using one single honeycomb backdrop panel. But as always, let's first take a look at the other products I'm going to use. So obviously we have the honeycomb backdrop die, the Hive stamp set for most of the images, a bug deal for the big branch and leaves, Dance with Dan for one of the baby cubs, Critters in the Jungle for the flower, the honeycomb shaker gift tag die set, the platform pop-up die set for the grass border, the everyday sentiment banner die set, and finally the yellow dotted paper and the aqua dotted paper from the Stripes and Sprinkles 6x6 paper pack. So, I cut a Strathmore Bristol smooth panel, slightly bigger than the honeycomb backdrop die, and I'm going to use scattered straw, fossilized amber, and ripe persimmon oxidings to color this panel. From the middle of the panel towards the edges, I'm applying scattered straw, next fossilized amber, and then ripe persimmon. Inking a panel, it never looks good at the beginning, but once you start blending the inks, the magic happens. So I am coming back and forth with my blending tools to mix the colors as nicely as possible. So here it looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to add some splatters and then I will set the panel aside to dry. Now let's cut our honeycomb backdrop. I'm centering the die in the middle of the panel, and I keep it in place using washi tape on the 4 sides. And to make sure that all the tiny pieces cut perfectly, I am going to run the panel back and forth 5 times through my die cutting machine. And this is what we have now. It is quite an intricate die, so that's why all the tiny hexagonal pieces are still attached. This is what we want, it's perfect. So now I'm going to add a foam square at the back of each hexagonal piece. It does take a little time to do this step, but you will see that it's definitely worth it. So I am adding a full square on the biggest pieces, and for the ones on the edges, I just cut my foam squares in half. And here we go. Now I'm just taping the panel on my work surface to keep it still. I have already peeled all the backing papers of the squares, and now I am attaching a light yellow panel that I cut from the Stripes and Sprinkles 6x6 paper pack. I am pressing firmly to connect everything, and now we're going to remove the frame. I am doing this step very gently, we don't want the thin hexagonal lines to break. I'm just pulling the frame slowly, and depending on the thickness of your paper, or how many times you run the panel through your machine, there may be still a few spots where the die didn't cut well, so you can use a blade to snip those parts. And here we go. I really love the wow effect when you finally pull the whole frame. Everything is all lined up, it looks so nice. So the first card we're going to work on is the shaker card. Off screen I added double-sided tape at the back of it on the 4 sides, and I also added a dot of liquid glue on most of the junctions. I am going to stick a piece of acetate to create the window of our shaker card, and I'm using heavy acrylic blocks to make sure that everything connects. I trim the excess of acetate off screen, and I'm going to add foam strips at the back of my window panel on the 4 edges. This will create dimension and room for the sequins. Now, we want the sequins to move freely inside the panel. We don't want them to pack together against the sides. So I'm using my powder tool. I am rubbing it on the inside edges of the foam strips. It's going to make the foam non-sticky, and this way the sequins will stay away from it. Now let's get rid of the excess of powder. Let's make this window very clean. I am using a microfiber cloth to do that. And now it's time to add our shaker accessories. On the first cards I used the golden heart sequins, but I ran out of those, so I'm using golden sequins instead. I am pouring a few spoons on the acetate. Next I can remove the backing papers from the foam strips. And I am going to attach the same yellow pattern paper as before to close my shaker panel, pressing firmly on the edges to connect the paper to the foam, and voila, super cute! I am going to trim the edges, and before moving on to the coloring, I want to quickly color a grass border. To color it more easily, I am keeping it in its original spot using washi tape at the back, and I'm using shabby shutters and Modlon oxidings to color it. And then I will add a few splatters as well. So now we can move on to the coloring. Here I have all my images. I stamped them on Transotype perfect coloring paper using lawnfawn jet black ink. And I am going to color everything using my alcohol markers. I am using graphite brush markers and Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. And I like to use 3 shades when I color images. I always apply the darker shade first, mostly on the edges, or like here following the middle of the leaf. Next I apply a medium shade that I blend with the darker shade, and then I add a lighter shade that I blend with the first shades to color the rest of the image. And sometimes I repeat the process to get a darker result. and the coloring is done, I am going to cut everything off screen using the coordinating dies. And before attaching the images on the panels, I am going to work on the greetings. I am treating a piece of black licorice cardstock with powder. This will help the powder to stick to the ink only. I am stamping the Happy Bee Day and the You're Sweet as Honey greetings using clear embossing ink. Next, I am sprinkling white embossing powder on the ink, and then I'm using my heat tool to heat the powder and melt it. Now, I want to put those greetings into small banners, but the die is too long, so I am taping the die with the left hand close to the word happy, and I'm sending it to my die cutting machine. Now I am taping the die with the right hand close to the word day, a run through the machine, and here we go, we have a custom banner that fits our greeting. I did the same for the other greeting, and now I am going to start attaching things on the shaker panel, beginning with the grass border and banner using liquid glue, and 2mm foam squares for the images. Now let's work on the second card. I cut a Honeycomb shaker gift tag frame out of gold glitter cardstock, and I cut a matching back panel out of the pattern paper from the Stripes and Sprinkles 6x6 paper pack. I am sticking the golden frame using 1mm foam squares, and I won't need the handle, so I'm cutting it off. And next, I am going to stick the remaining images I have on this panel. And my cards are done. This is the final result. This honeycomb backdrop is really amazing, and I love how each card completes the other. It's beautiful, and I hope that you like them too. Thank you so much for stopping by and for watching this video. Have a very nice day and see you in the next one. Bye!